The next game features the 3 seed in the South, Iowa State, against the 6 seed, Ole Miss. Iowa State kind of just comfortably cruised to a win today against Lipscomb. Ole Miss, it seemed like that was going to be the case. They really controlled the first half and really controlled the whole game until UNC ended up cutting it to a one possession game after being down 22 late in the second half. Then Sean Padula hit a big shot to go up 5 and pretty much ice it with under a minute left. Um, you know, that game was weird. It seems like UNC's pretty. They do that a lot, where they just don't start playing till the second half. They get down and dig themselves a hole. Wasn't super encouraged by Ole Miss letting them back in that game. Like, that's a game where you get up big, you just got to either like maintain or just not let them get back in like that. I know UNC's been playing well, and they're not going to be non-existent on the offensive end for an entire game, but Ole Miss went large stretches of the second half without scoring, especially in the last 10 minutes, which I think is a bit concerning here in this one. Iowa State, they always have hung their hat defensively. They're 7th in adjusted defense per Torvik. They're 51st in the country in 2-point field goal percentage defense. However, they are a little bit worse at the rim, I guess, 60.9% at the rim. And they defend the 3 solidly, but that's not really a shot that Ole Miss is dying to take. They're 151st in 3-point percentage, 150th in 3-point rate, so it's not like they're taking a ton of them. But I look at Iowa State's defense here as maybe their edge for them to win this game. But I also think that Ole Miss has the ability to win this game based on the way they played in the first half today. I just don't know. Their consistency kind of worries me a little bit.
Yeah, for me, it kind of depends on what is this Iowa State offense going to look like against good competition without Keyshawn Gilbert. I know they've played some games without him, but he really gets them into their transition game, and I don't really think they have that much of an avenue to play in transition without him. Ole Miss is a pretty good transition denial defense, and with Lipsy not at 100%, I know he played, but didn't play a ton of minutes, and he sat out basically that entire conference tournament with that groin injury. It's not that easy to come back from a groin injury and be 100% right away. So I don't think he's going to be able to really push it in transition all the time. So I think this team actually slows down a little bit, and this game becomes a little bit of a grinder. And Iowa State, they're completely fine playing in a game like that. So, and I don't know, they can't really rely on turning over Ole Miss because Ole Miss is really good with the ball. They can handle the ball at all 5 positions all the time. But the problem is Ole Miss isn't really that great of a shot-making team. On paper, like, you look at the roster and it's like, yeah, this team has a lot of talented shot makers, a lot of talented scorers on the roster. I just don't think they take great shots. I don't think they generate great looks for each other. It's a lot of isolation. Iowa State has really good one-on-one defenders, so they defend in isolation pretty well. And yeah, you mentioned Iowa State, not really a good rim defense. Almost doesn't really look to get to the rim. They kind of live in the mid-range and off the dribble from 3. So not super worried about that. Iowa State they're okay with Ole Miss taking those shots, and if Ole Miss can't capitalize on those, I would like to think that Iowa State is in a pretty good spot. Iowa State can also win on the glass on both ends of the floor. They have the edge there. The free throw battle, they have an edge there. And yeah, overall on the interior, they have an edge there as well. Ole Miss does a pretty good job of denying the rim, but Iowa State, they still have shooting, and Gilbert isn't really a shooter, so it's not really, doesn't really hurt them too much. like Momcilovic and Curtis Jones should get opportunity in this game on the offensive end. Overall, it the game gives me like a weird vibe where I think Ole Miss can keep this game tight because sometimes I don't really know what I'm getting from Iowa State's offense with the health with the health concerns, but I'm going to side with Iowa State here. I do think it's a pretty low scoring game though with the pace that the pace is going to look a little bit different, I think, without Gilbert on the floor.
Yeah, and also without Gilbert, right? I mean, Ole Miss is 34th in turnover rate defense. Iowa State isn't fantastic taking care of the ball. They're 159th in turnover rate. Not having Gilbert is, I think, going to be a bit of a problem in that area. I think that's a way that Ole Miss could stay in the game if they're able to turn Iowa State over a little bit more. Sometimes Curtis Jones, I feel like, tries to do a bit too much with the ball. Tries to force stuff, and sometimes he takes some bad shots that are just as good as turnovers to the opponent. So I think that maybe that could be an avenue for Ole Miss if they can force some turnovers. Because like I said, Iowa State isn't great at taking care of the basketball, and not having Gilbert definitely hurts them in that area.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the numbers, like Gilbert is their most turnover prone guard, but I definitely understand what you're saying there with like and Jones only a 10% turnover rate, but it's just
Just
having
like
that extra ball
opportunity,
handler.
right?
Yeah, and having that extra ball handler is really important. Like Gilbert not being on the floor puts the ball in the hands of Nate Heisey a little bit more, and Heisey doesn't handle the ball that well. So if they're going to pressure, like they're going to be more turnover prone. So having Gilbert on the floor, regardless of what his turnover numbers look like, is it's definitely a loss not having him out there.
Yeah. I have this weird feeling about this game. Um, I felt this maybe from the first time I looked at the bracket that Ole Miss, with the injury to Gilbert, could be Sweet 16 destined, maybe even further. Depending on what happens with Michigan State, and they have their flaws, but with Michigan State and New Mexico in the round of 32, sorry, on Sunday. I I like Ole Miss to cover here. Um, I think I'm actually going to go out and say that they're going to win this game. I just have this feeling, more of a gut feeling call. I think they maybe are able to turn them over, um, and force Iowa State's offense into just not really getting into anything. Without Gilbert, he just gets them organized, like you said, um, and we've seen them kind of struggle without him. And if Curtis Jones isn't making shots, and Lipsy's not 100%, I'm just not that comfortable backing Iowa State, even though they do have some advantages in some other areas. But I think I'm going to roll with Ole Miss, as much as I would like to see Iowa State move on. We've been high on them all year, but I think the Rebels find a way to win a close one and advance to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I could definitely see this going either way, and it is a weird feel for me as well. But I'm going to side with Iowa State just because it's the team that I've trusted all year long, and they played a few games without Gilbert now, so hopefully they're comfortable in their new roles. So, and I mean, they played well today, albeit it was against Lipscomb, who has a pretty bad defense overall. Those ASUN defenses aren't very good, but I'll trust that Iowa State can win the battle on the interior, and Ole Miss's shot making doesn't go off, because I do think they have the ability, despite what the numbers say. Just they have a ton of talent across the board, but yeah, I'm gonna trust the front court of Iowa State to win this game.
Yeah, so I could definitely see it. I think there's an argument for both sides. I think this should be a really fun game that we're going to get on Sunday. But who knows who's going to come out the other end. But either way, should be a fun game. Looking forward to it. Winner is going to take on the winner of New Mexico and Michigan State in the Sweet 16.